The virus pandemic called SARS-CoV-2 has affected the international system in its economic and geopolitical aspects, but the subsequent economic crisis will also affect nations, their position in the system, and internally to their companies. Globalization, which has been increasing for decades, has been experiencing a decline that the pandemic has boosted. In this sense, there seems to be a coincidence in admitting the tricyclicality of the crisis that combine three simultaneous problems: cybernetic, climatic, and geopolitics. The purpose of this video is to explore the coincident characteristics, focusing on the more dominant risk. In my case, it will be the geopolitical one, and how the predictions for 2030 will be analyzed by its context, the actors involved, talking about the three cases, and finally, see the consequence of it and see what can be done to solve this problem. The first of the cases will be the transformation from a unipolar world to a much more multipolar world. At this stage, it will be identified by the power of the United States and how it will be seen disputed by China, a country that is motivating a change in the world balance of power both because of its rapid growth in recent decades and because of the economic, demographic, military, or cultural compatibilities it has acquired over the years. The fact that the United States is going to lose hegemony opens the door to competition between powers that increases the risk of military escalations aggravated by nuclear weapons and other type of weapons of mass destruction. It is also very important to stress that other countries are becoming centers of power in certain or nearby regions. In the second point, the companies will be the new heavyweights of geopolitics. The new protagonists will be the companies, while other more traditional non-state actors such as terrorist groups, social movements, NGOs, unions, or associations will see their powers and influence eclipsed. The so-called GAFA, acronym for Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon, whose market capitalization is approaching the $3 trillion. Currently, it is estimated that 5,000 million people are internet users, which is why we must be attentive of what is coming. User data will be classified as the next great natural resource for the year 2030, and it is something that we should have make concern about. We must create a global institution headed by international intelligence analysts and computer analysts who focus on closely monitoring their actions and positions. In the third point, we'll focus on the future of European Union. It does not seem to be drawn in various optimistic tones. The economic crisis will most likely strike again at those partners who have already suffered especially from that in 2007, from which they had barely begun to recover. The existing division between the successful North and the in-depth South will be possibly increased and emigration from the increasingly depopulated East towards the richer areas would risk accentuating anti-immigration sentiments and reinforcing nationalist and populist movements. Thus, the Union will head towards a scenario of great fracture and division, which will make it even more difficult to move towards the ally of a strategic autonomy in which the actors act as one in the face of the multiple threats and challenges that are brewing in the international system. That is why different strategies are planned, which help to see how to have a more important union, as in the current case of refugees, that many European countries no longer have the space to receive them. So, an institution must be created only focused on what the EU needs in economic or any type of um, positive change toward the refugees. Although the conclusion that can be drawn today could be considered hasty, it is clear that the trends towards deglobalization was already present before the pandemic. The vulnerability that globalization has shown were increased would, in turn, force modify it to make it more resilient. Everything seems to indicate that a multi-dimensional bipolar competition between China and the US is growing international system, which the consequence of the pandemic would have accelerated. China appears to be emerging from a crisis with a stronger international position and a desire to lead in all areas globally. Faced with the USA, has preferred to reaffirm its isolated tendency, ceding leadership to China. Relating to data, this problem will be used for political issues. In fact, information will be commonly solved for political campaigns to constantly use information available on social networks or apps to draw up strategies, send messages, or try to influence the political agenda. That's why we need to create institution mentioned previously. The crisis within the next 8 years will also have a very negative effect on those states that suffer from previous factors: religion, ethnic, political, etc., increasing instability in already vulnerable geographic areas. Threats such as terrorism, organized crime, or the radicalizations of youth with no hope for a future, etc., will receive less attention due to the scarcity of resources in fragile and failed states, but also due to the decrease in aid from other powers and international organizations that will also suffer the crisis. Those geographical areas could be produced that will be marginalized in the Sahel, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and others. Finally, the European Union will have to face more tensions. On this occasion, the in-debt countries of the South compared to the others of the North were reluctant to increase debt, which could produce a fracture with very profound repercussions that, without a doubt, will spread to other areas. In fact, it will define more towards abandoning every pretense of achieving a united Europe, and, as a consequence, strategic autonomy. The next few years will be a vitally important stress test for the European Union and for the whole world, but without a doubt, the more time before we make the change, the better our future will be. Thank you.